Hey, welcome. I wanted to do a video about fishing in Dubai. This is really meant for the tourist that's going to be in Dubai and wants to dip a line and see what happens. Just kind of give you a little bit of what my experience was. Now, I'm not saying that my experience is going to be your experience. You can make different choices. You could go at different boats, but this is about what happened when I went. I went at the beginning of December of 2019. I was there with a company event and had a little bit of time to kill and decided I'd go out and fish because I usually fish basically wherever in the world I go. So I went online and I looked for a fishing guide service that could take me out that wouldn't cost a ton of money. And I found a place called Fishing Booker, and I believe it's fishingbooker.com. And you can go and look at different boats and see what they have available, look at the different rates and things along those lines. So I found a boat that was probably the cheapest out there, probably not the best decision, but I'd already spent enough money there. I didn't want to spend a ton on a boat too. And did a little bit of research and saw some of the species of fish that they had available there, and was kind of surprised to see things like, kingfish and several other species that I'll post in the video. I kind of had high hopes that we would go out and target some species, but the thing that really got my blood boiling was sitting on the beach and watching these schools of baitfish jump out of the water as barracuda chased them. And you'd see all the seagulls flock over to where the barracuda were. So I was completely willing to put on some kind of top water and zing something across the surface and see if we could pull a couple barracuda out, because the barracuda pull pretty good. And just so you know, the barracuda that are in Dubai, they're very numerous, but they're the Pacific style looking barracuda. So they've got the long needle nose. They're not the type of barracuda like you see in like the Virgin Islands or something like that. They're not the ones you see in Florida. Very different species, but I've caught them off the coast of California, and they're still fun to catch. They pull really hard. They attack a bait like you wouldn't believe. So that's kind of what I wanted to do after seeing so many barracuda on the beach. And we did a yacht cruise, and we saw them on the water there as well. So I booked the trip with the boat. I'm not going to say the name of the boat. I'm going to be respectful of them. They're out there trying to earn a living. I think they did the best they could. I paid somewhere in the neighborhood of about $325 US before tips or anything. It said on the documentation that something about a fishing license. I was never asked for a fishing license. I was never given a fishing license. Dubai is not a city you want to break laws in. They take law breaking very serious. So probably should have asked a few more questions about a fishing license, but it never really came into play. Some places it comes with your charter. Some places you have to pay separately. So let's just say, for all practical purposes, I didn't have a fishing license. So if you go through the charter service, the one thing you're going to notice is that there's some communication barrier issues that you're going to hit. I don't speak Arabic. They mostly speak English, but it can be kind of hard to understand. Put the WhatsApp app on your phone, though. A lot of the companies, it looks like, operate through WhatsApp, including Fishing Booker, and it makes it easier because at least you can text. So I booked the boat. It took a couple of days for them to come back and say I was confirmed. Said that the boat was for up to 6 to 8 people, I believe. I showed up. My charter started at 8 a.m. I showed up about 7:30. WhatsApped them and told them I was there. They met me up on the dock and took me down to the boat, and I was the only person there. I'm showing some pictures of the boat, so you'll see what it looks like. So I had the whole boat to myself, and for anybody who's booked charters before, normally you get really rooked if you're going to go out there by yourself. You're going to pay the full expense on the boat, regardless of whether you have 4 people or 6 people or whatever. But, they took me out for the rate that I paid. I paid for a 4-hour trip. Note that it's about a 20-minute ride out of the marina in Dubai, and I'll show you the map of where the marina is, out to just to get out to open water. Once we got into open water, then it was probably about another, 15, 20 minutes out to the first spot that we fished at. So once we got out in the water, I was kind of surprised to see them bust these little rods out of the rod well down the storage space down the bottom of the boat. These rods were like jigging rods. They were probably 3.5 feet long. They weren't very heavy duty at all. They were stubby, but they weren't like a serious like over the like a serious jigging rod. It was more like a freshwater rod. They had spinning reels on with very heavy monofilament, and attached to the very heavy monofilament was about a 2 ounce drop weight with a sabiki rig looking hook, one above the weight and one down below the weight on another small leader. Mine had been broken and then just tied back in a knot at one point. And then they tipped those sabiki rig looking hooks with pieces of squid, frozen squid that they had brought on board. So immediately I knew we were going to be bottom fishing. Wasn't thrilled about that. So we dropped the lines down, and you start getting bit pretty quick. But most of the fish we were catching, I forget what they call them. They've got a different name for the fish. We talked about that pretty extensively on the way back in. But most of the fish that we caught they looked like snapper, and you'll see some in the pictures here. And then there were a couple other fish that were not snapper that were just these small, colorful fish. I told him I wasn't going to be keeping any fish because I was in a hotel room and I didn't have any place to keep them or cook them, so all the fish were going to these guys. And they filled the cooler with everything we caught. Didn't matter if it was small, didn't matter if it was big. Well, we didn't really catch anything big, but everything went into the cooler. Was a little bit disappointed to see that, and it kind of explains what happened, the rest of the day. So we had to move 3 or 4 times because the bite would completely drop off, and basically what we did is drift fished. So we turned sideways to the current, we dropped the lines down in the water, and you let it sink down to the bottom, and as the current will start to pull your line out every now and then, you drop out a little bit of slack just to let the line sit still, and that's usually when you'd get hit. I was really shocked, though, when I caught my bigger fish of the day, which at this point, my trip was supposed to go till noon. About 11 o'clock, we finally started catching some fish. The very first bigger fish that came on board was actually the captain. There was a captain and a deckhand. The captain was fishing off the back end of the boat, and he hooks up to a fish and starts yelling something in Arabic. The deckhand goes running back there. At that point, the deckhand starts hand-lining the line into the boat. The captain's just reeling up the slack, and that's how they landed the fish, was by hand-lining it in, so I thought something was wrong with his reel. Almost a few seconds after he got his in, I hooked up to a better fish, and there was some bend in my rod, and the deckhand comes over, grabs my line, and hand-lines the fish in. Tells me to reel up the slack. Well, I can't tell you how disappointed I was that was their method of fishing. I thought it was a fluke at first, that something was wrong, but that's how they do it. So I caught another fish immediately after that, and as soon as I hooked up to the fish, the deckhand comes running over, and I told him, no, don't touch the line. I want to fight the fish. And he looked at me like I was smoking crack. So he said, okay, and I reeled the fish in and, let him remove it. They weren't really allowing me to touch a fish or bait. They were doing all that for me. I'm kind of more of a hands-on guy and would rather do some of that myself. But anyway, they took the fish off for me. They put it in the cooler. And now we're getting close to about 11:45. We've probably caught about 15, 20 fish. Nothing big at all. The biggest fish are in the pictures. And then noon hits. And the captain says, time's up. Do you want to pay to extend? And I was like, at that point, I'm kind of disgusted because I'm understanding I'm not gonna do anything else on this boat. This is it. So I said, nope, let's go ahead and go. So we pack up and we start heading back into the harbor. And as we're heading in, we come across a monster school of barracuda feeding on bait on the surface. There's bait flying everywhere. There's birds flying everywhere. The water's boiling. And the guy looks at me and says, look, barracuda. And I just shook my head, yep. And we head back in. I mean, I wasn't gonna pay to stay out there any longer. That's what they were trying to get me to do. But I'd paid enough and figured that I deserved probably a better experience than what I got. So, long story, if you go to Dubai, look at your boats, look at what they offer, maybe talk to the captain. definitely make sure that you make it clear to him what species you want to go after. It looks like it's been heavily overfished. The species they show on the chart, I seriously doubt show up very often. There's no bottom structure to speak of. There's it's hit and miss what you're going to go after. He asked if I wanted to troll in the beginning, and I didn't want to waste the whole time trolling. But in hindsight, we should have trolled, because then we would have picked up some different species of fish that probably would have made me a little bit more happy. But I hope this helps anybody that's going fishing in Dubai. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And thanks for listening to the video. And I wish I had more film, but honestly, there was nothing really worth filming. I filmed probably the best fish I'd caught for the day, and that was at the very beginning of the video. So thanks for listening. And again, any questions, hit me up, and subscribe and like to the channel if you like what you heard. Appreciate it.